Hello, and welcome back to the Jack Miles channel, where we have smiles and smiles that go miles and miles. Now today I am here with you. That's the Prince Eso, by the way, not Jack. This is not the sound of his beautiful voice. This is me, because Jack doesn't feel like doing commentary. So, you're in my hands today, but before we get started, let me just say this. I have been a Magplar main for 4 years. I am known as a MagDK on my YouTube channel because I moved over to MagDK after I had all those years on a Magplar. So I have 4 years of experience on a Magplar. It's all I played every single day. Now, as for this build itself, I made this build with Jack. We made this together. We tested it together. I have fought side by side with Jack using this build. So, rest assured that you are in good hands. So with that out of the way, let's get started. Now, sets. Okay, so I'm going to quickly show you guys the sets that he is running on this build, and then I will come back and I will go over the traits and the enchants and why things are the way that they are. But for those impatient people that just want to see the sets, we'll do that now. So, the first set is Spinners. This is a Magplar's best friend. It has been for years. Spinners is one of the best sets to ever run on a Magplar, so in metas where we can run this, it's always a go-to. If you didn't know what Spinners does, it's 2 lines of max magic, 1 line of spell damage, and then 3400 penetration. The other option would be to go stuns. However, stuns is a very single target based armor set because you have to proc it through toppling charge. Toppling charge, like I said, is only single target, whereas stuns is with you all the time. And as a Magplar, we have all our AoE abilities, meaning that this is the best set to go for. Next set is Vatashrine of Ice Staff. This set right here, it's not as strong as it used to be, however it is still very good. Most importantly, it is completely free. All you do is you cast Elemental Drain on the enemy, and then this goes right to them. It's also AoE, so it can hit multiple players at once if you want it to. So it's free pressure. You can swap this out for any 2-piece set in the game that you want to. The Black Rose is a very good choice also, however, Jack has gone for this one right here, and it's been working very well for him also. The next set is Balorghs. Now, we did bounce between a lot of options, because there are so many choices that you can go for. We completely took Balorghs off the build, and Jack still had consistently 7 to 8k jabs, he was still hitting 9 to 11k crescent sweeps, and his healing and penetration was still through the roof. But the reason we came back to Balorghs, and he has decided to settle on it for this build, is for a very simple reason. People are very tanky this patch. People don't want to die this patch. Everybody has 30 plus k health and is in big resistance sets, meaning that when he comes across an opponent that is very tanky and he cannot kill within just a few jabs, he can save up the Balorghs and do a very big fat combo on them. That's the only reason this is here. However, you can flex this out, trust me. We tried Scoria, we tried 2 1 pieces, he's tried Grothdar. You can pick any monster set you want. It will not affect your build's performance. It is going to be your preference and playstyle on which monster set you pick. The next and final set is Pariah. Now, everybody's running a defensive set this patch. 99% of players will be running a defensive set. There are many options. Fortified Brass, Swift, Armor Master, Pariah. There's so many sets. However, this is the one that he has gone for on his Magplar. And the reason for that is Magplar's health always fluctuates. It goes up and down all of the time because we don't have things like Vigor. We do have healing abilities like Rune, Ritual, and Jabs. All of these things passively heal you in a way like Vigor does, also the Bubble. But the problem with this is, in open world and 1vx or outnumbered, when you end up kiting and using things like Mist Form up and down towers and around rocks, you're no longer standing in your Rune, you're no longer standing in your Ritual, and you are no longer jabbing enemies to get the health that all of these abilities provide. Meaning the only way to get your health up when it is down is Honor of the Dead or Breath of Life. So your health is constantly going up and down like a yo-yo, meaning that you get to utilize the bonus here, the 50 piece bonus, on Pariah. The lower your health gets, the more resistances you gain. On classes where you have lots of passive healing, this set is not as good, so you can pick one of the other defensive options. However, on a Magplar, it is beautiful. There you go, and that's all the sets. We are not running Malakath. And a lot of people will be like, what the hell? You know, procs are back, Malakath is king. No. No. It's a lot harder to be running Malakath on mags. Mags struggle to stack spell damage as well, meaning the procs don't hit as hard, and just because procs are back does not mean you have to be in procs to win. Okay, so he is not in procs. We did test Malakath. Okay, we did test, and the damages are so close. So close. So very, very close. But after all the testing that we did, he was ending up preferring this one, because without the Malakath you can run the monster set. If you run Malakath and this particular setup, and a few of the other ones that we tried, you couldn't run a monster set. So with the damage and performance being so close, Jack has opted to go for this setup, because at any moment if he decides he wants more versatility through his monster set, then he can just swap Balrogs out with whatever he needs at the time, and that is it. Trust me, this build does not need Malakath. Malakath is not that good on mags this patch, because we struggle to stack spell damage without suffering greatly. So those are the sets. We have Spinner's Front Bar, Ice Staff, Vatashran Back Bar, Balrogs, and then 5-piece Pariah. Now, for those of you that want to stick around and see the rest of the details, here we go. So, traits and enchants. Now, as you'll see here on Jack's front bar, he has a Spinner's Maul. Last patch, everybody was running Sword, because Sword is / was kind of the better choice, but like I said, everybody's running things like Pariah. People have easily 40k resistances at the best of times. So the extra pen that this gives is much more beneficial than the sword. So, the enchant is a shock enchant. The reason this is here is to apply the minor vulnerability, which if you didn't know is 5% extra damage whenever this procs. So you get the initial burst up front, and then you get 5% damage. The trait is in Sharpened. If you haven't gathered by now, this is a penetration build in all fronts, which is the most damage that you can push from a setup like this. You can go things like Nirnhoned or a Flame enchant, however this is without a doubt the most pressuring and damaging setup you can go for. Backbar is a weapon enchant. This is for lad attacking at a distance, to buff up and prepare to come in for his combo, also to buff his heals when he needs to be defensive. It's also a powered, again for those bigger heals. Powered on a staff is 9%. If you go sword and board, it goes down to 4.5. It also means you lose Ellie Drain on the back bar, meaning you have to put Ellie Drain somewhere up here. Which also means you will lose another damaging skill, and like I said, people are so tanky this patch, everyone's stacking so much resistance and so much healing. Good luck killing somebody if you have to run Ellie Drain up here on your front bar to lose one of these. You could maybe lose the bubble, but you will lose your snare on enemies, you will lose a lot of your defensive healing. However, it is completely up to you, but then you will also lose the Ice Staff on the back bar of Vatashran, losing these extra dots as well. So you'll lose all of this damage, and you'll lose something up on your front bar too. So yep, that is why you go Ice Staff. If you go Sword and Board, that's up to you. However, that is something we also tested, and this came out with much, much better results. Down here on the Balrogs and the body, we do have 3 tri-stat enchants. One is on the head, one is on the chest, and one is on the legs. He has 4 max magic, feet, hands, waist and shoulders. And he also has 2 impen 1, 2, 3 well fitted, and 1 reinforced. If you want some flexible things, you can change on this. You can go for sturdy. However, blocking's not a great idea in BlackWood right now. There are some blocking bugs, and it ruins your stamina, so Jack has opted for the roll dodging. And even when those bugs are out the way, he will stick with the roll dodging and the well fitted, because it's easier to dodge damage than to block it and take it anyway. You don't need the reinforced here. You can definitely swap the reinforced. There are some flexible things on this build, like I've said. The back bar, the monster set, and definitely some of the traits. But through testing, Jack's just preferred what he has already. But if you want to swap some things, go for the sturdy if you prefer the blocky playstyle. Drop this reinforced as well, have another piece of sturdy or another piece of impen, and go for it there. You don't need impen this patch, not really. Malakath is back, everybody's running it other than a few specs. However, Cyrodiil is full of mainly stamina players in the first place, and they're all running Malakath. So no crits, and when they do crit, it's very low, because Malakath, as you'll see here, critical damage is reduced by 50%, so even when they do crit you, it is very low. And all these defensive sets, everybody's in heavy armor, and as you'll see, crit chance when you're in heavy armor is also very low. Classes like Nightblade and Sork will still crit you, however, being this tanky at stage 3 Vampire, don't worry about the crits, honestly, so you don't need the impen. So you can go for some sturdy, some well fitted, or more reinforced if you want to. Down here on the jewelry, we have 1 spell damage and 2 mag recovery, 2 arcane and 1 infused. Now, we did also go back and forward with these as well. When he had this as a recovery, he said he had too much sustain and he could push for more damage. You can drop this one to an arcane as well if you want to, just for that extra max magicka, which will be more healing and more damage. This is also a little bit of a flex, however this is almost that perfect sweet spot where you have just enough damage and just enough sustain, and neither one suffers between the other. Now let's go over the skills, because there are some flexible spots in here, and I will go over those and I'll explain why things are the way that they are, so don't panic when you see these bar setups. I will go over them. So these are obviously unbuffed tooltips, so do not pay attention to the tooltips. Again, this is all unbuffed and this is a max penetration build, as mag does not need to stack anywhere near as much spell damage as stamina do with weapon damage. The healing is perfectly fine on this build. It can hit up to 11k Breath of Lives or Honor of the Deads, so ignore all these tooltips and I'll show you the rest in a minute. First skill is Puncturing Sweeps. This is your main spammable. I have seen this hitting for 7 to 8k against my DK, which if you didn't know has 44k resistances currently in this patch. So the next skill is Toppling Charge. This is your main stun, it's also a gap close, and it does a decent amount of damage as well. This is a huge part of your combo, because you'll set enemies off balance, which makes them take 10% extra damage, so then you go from Toppling Charge into your ultimate as your main combo. Solar Barrage, this is a flex, okay, this is a flex. However, as this is an outnumbered /1vx build and you fight multiple people at once, Jack has opted for the extra cleave, the extra AoE ability to hurt multiple players at once. With the jabs and the Solar Barrage, that's lots of cleave on top of his ultimate over here as well. So you can replace this with anything you like. You can replace it with the other morph of Vampire's Bane, which hits multiple targets and is a decent dot. You can replace it with, hell, you can even put your beam on, however I'll get to that in just a second. You can also run Purifying Light right here, which is a decent burst skill, but it's not the greatest, which is why he's opted for Solar Barrage. Degen, this is a fantastic dot. It also increases your maximum spell damage by 20%. This is a must. You must have this on the bars somewhere, whether it's front or back. Always have Degen on a mag build. It's common sense. Now, the last skill is Living Dark. Most Magplar builds that you'll see will usually have Beam here. We are now back in a tanky proc meta. okay? Beam in a proc meta, it's terrible. It is absolutely god awful. You will never kill anybody with this, and if you do, they don't have thumbs. So we tried and tried and tried, so many setups and so many fights with the beam, and it just wasn't working. It does not hit hard enough in procs. It doesn't have that burst execute that stamina executes do. It's not the same. So he's opted for the Living Dark here because Living Dark is very, very strong. It snares. It has a pretty much 100% uptime on snare for anybody that hits you, so it's a great escape tool. It's also a great way to slow enemies down if you're chasing them. And it is also, again, unbuffed, decent heals over time on top of all the healing over time that we have. Like I said before, which I will get into, this build will have lots of healing capabilities when it's situational, but it's not all of the time. The other skill we're running is the ultimate Crescent Sweep. This is one of the best ultimates in the game right now. Hands down, this is one of the best ultimates in the game right now. It hits so hard. I've been fighting Jack on this while we were testing for days now, and he has consistently hit me with 9 to 11k Crescent Sweeps, crit and non-crit alike. Okay, 11k. This is one of the cheapest ultimates in the game. It only 77 ultimate. You get it back so quick because of Magplar passives, and you can also run things like heroism pots, and like I said before, you can also flex your monster set, which means you could put things like Bloodspawn here. On top of that, he's also running Balogs, which means the follow-up after the initial ult hits even harder. So he's hit me with 11k Crescent Sweeps, and then the initial dot ticks, and then because he's procced Balogs, he comes in with jabs that hit me for 7 to 8k. I've seen him do it to other players and drop them from 30k health to nothing in seconds. This is one of the best ultimates. Do not swap this patch. Back bars, Ellie Drain. You need this in my opinion. This is for any mag build. It is 6000 pen and 168 mag recovery every 1 second. This is also what procs your Ice Staff of Vatashran on the back bar here. The free damage that you get is applied by Ellie Drain, so you need that skill. It is a must. We'll come back to this skill right here, but so let's move on to Extended Ritual. This is your cleanse. This is also one of your heal over times. This is a huge radius. You put this down on the ground, you stand in this, you get these beautiful heals, and you can take off any nasty effects for you and your teammates. The next skill, this just got a buff, in my opinion. Now, when you used to stand in this rune, you would get extra resistances. However, now, as you'll see at the bottom, it heals you for 1630 every 1 second. Again, these are all unbuffed. So, with the healing from this, which is 2269 every 2 seconds, the healing from jabs, which is very strong. You heal for 44% of the damage done with this ability, and like I've said, he hits for 8k jabs on this build most of the time. So he's getting a lot of healing from his jabs, his rune, his ritual, and then he will also keep his bubble up as much as he can, which again, as you see there, is 2260 health when you get hit. So there is lots of passive healing, but it's not all of the time. That's where this skill comes in. This is your snare removal, and it is always also your movement. This is your ability to kite and move and get away and escape. So if you haven't gathered by now, this build is a vampire. On top of the tanky sets he's running and all the healing he has, he is stage 3 vampire, which means it is nearly impossible to kill this build when it gets low. That is another reason that Pariah is so good on this build. Your health gets low, your vampire kicks in, and then you get all of those resistances, 1 breath of life, full health, and I've seen executes land on him for 1000 damage. Just 1000 damage this patch, because he has up to 40k resistances. Stage 3 vampire. He's so beefy. He's on the back bar because sometimes he'll slot Sigic Ultimate, makes them do 5% less damage. He pops in a move pot, which makes them do 10% even less damage, and I've seen executes land on him when he has like 2000 health for 1000 damage. It's just broken. In my opinion, Magplar is very broken this patch. Most people haven't clicked onto it, but it's ridiculous. Next skill is Honor of the Dead. This is your healing spammable. Again, unbuffed tooltip. It's already over 11k. This is very good. I've seen this tick for 11k on crit, and it averages around 8.5 on non-crits. Nothing else to say about this ability. It's fantastic. Now this is another flex, but I did say why he runs this. It's for the Balorgs if he needs it. The other ability you can put there is the Sigic Ultimate. Like I've said, he does this quite often, but in certain situations when there's too many Zergs, he puts the Vampire on. This goes here, 5% damage taken is reduced. But most of the time, the Vampire ult goes here for the extra pressure against huge groups. It does ridiculous damage, and you also heal for the damage dealt when in this form, so you get healing from this, healing from the rune, healing from the ritual, healing from the jabs, healing from the bubble. You're a stage 3 vampire, so you're incredibly tanky. And he's in Pariah. Now a lot of people will look at this and they will think, wow, well you're just a tank. There is no damage to this build. That is completely untrue. Like I've said, I've told you what he's hit me with on my DK in 44k resistances as also a stage 3 vampire. So CP, the first one is Focus Mending. Now this is here because these two are very, very, very close between each other. It depends on the setup that you have and the skills you are using. For Jack's current setup, the best one he's found for the Honor of the Dead tooltips is Focus Mending. Funnily enough, if you have a different kind of setup, you may prefer Soothing Tide. Down from that we have Duelist Rebuff. This is to reduce single target damage taken because of all those pesky Nightblades and certain classes out there that are hitting very hard right now with single target abilities. If you find you're fighting a lot of stand-ins or anything with heavy AoE damage like a Magplar, you can use Unassailable. Up from that we have Biting Aura. Now this is 90% of Jack's damage. That's the jabs, his Solar Barrage, his Vampire Ultimate if he goes for that, or his Crescent Sweep. Everything comes under this one right here. He does have his dot, but that comes under Thaumaturge, and he's really only using that for the extra spell damage that it's given. So we've gone for Master at Arms. This again is all of his damage buffed other than the single dot he has. It increases your damage done with direct damage attacks. So stacking these two together, he has a lot of outgoing damage with all of his AoE cleave, and it is more than enough. As for everything else, it's just your passives that you want regardless. Throw the points in here, get as many of them as you can, and you're as good as gold. Over on the red side we just have healths in here, we have armor in here, and the other two that we've gone for is Juggernaut. Now I talked about this earlier. This was the one that reduces your damage taken by 10% when you pop in a move pot or somebody has stunned you. Keeping this up as much as possible to reduce damage taken is vital in such a high damage meta. Yes, everybody is tanky this patch, but the reason everybody is tanky this patch is because damage is crazy. Okay? So you can think that this is too tanky and it's too much, but trust me, it is not. It is not enough. You can be this tanky and kill people in 2-3 hits this patch. It is honestly that ridiculous. If you have not experienced that already, you will soon. Next one is Survival Instincts. Now, some people will think this is very strange on a Magplar, and they will say, oh, well, why not just go for this? Well, this one is better, and it is better for a few reasons. One, he is stage 3 vampire, so this counteracts the vampire very well. On top of that, in 1vx/outnumbered situations, you will always 100% uptime have a status effect on you. Even as a Magplar, because yes, you do have cleanse. However, if anybody has played Magplar for an extended amount of time, you will know that spamming cleanse is a death sentence. It's very expensive, you spend a lot of time with your back bar, and it's not something you always want to do. So having effects on you, which you will have being outnumbered, this is a vital skill in sustain this patch, especially if you're vampire. If you decide not to go vampire, you may not need this skill and you can go somewhere else. So those are the 4 slotables in the raid tree. Like I said, just get your passives in here when you have enough points and you'll be good to go. Green CP does not really matter, put in whatever you want. I'm not going to show you that, I'm not going to waste your time, so there's the CP. Now we're quickly going to go over Jack's stats, and I will explain a few things about his stats that are not true. Some of his stats won't show on the screen here, but I'll explain what I mean in just a second and tell you the true stats, or show you them at least, so you can see what I mean. So we'll start off with resistances. So resistance wise, on either bar he will have 34 spell resistance and 28k physical resistance. Do not worry about crit resistance, I have already explained before. Nobody's critting this patch, and when they do, it's only those Nightblades, and believe me, with the resistances he has with Stage 3 Vampire, when Pariah is procced, there is no way Nightblades are going to do enough crit damage to kill you. Trust me, we've fought a lot of Nightblades this patch already. The crits are no issue at all. You don't need to worry about crit resistance, but if that's a personal issue for you, like I said earlier, you can change whatever you like in the traits. Those are flexible for you. It will not break the build. The build are the sets, the skills, and the CP. The rest is all flexible. So resistances are very, very high. This is of course without the Pariah proc, 34k, 28k. With Pariah procced, it will go up a further 10k, as you'll see here in the bottom, 10k resistances based on your health missing. So when you're pretty much in execute health, like I said, when your health is very low and you may die, your resistances will go up by another 10k. Okay, so stack on an extra 10k resistances on top of what he has, and you can see why it's very hard to kill this build. On top of Stage 3 Vampire, and the healing that this build has. Now, we're not running procs, so spell damage does not need to be crazy. Everyone thinks you need so much spell damage this patch if you're trying to run procs. Well, we're not running procs, we have one proc. Just because procs are back does not mean it's the only way to play the game. The only proc he has is this, and like I've already said, it is a flexible spot. So spell damage wise, he has... oh, let me just get the Mistform buff in there as well. Just shy of 4,000 spell damage fully buffed, so that is plenty. Most Magplars won't even have this amount. Jack has just shy of 4,000 spell damage, which is more than enough, as I'll show you just on a buff tooltip here now. If I can get there in time. 15k Breath of Life. Okay, so yes, it is a penetration build, however, as you clearly saw, spell damage is through the roof. More than enough to stack with this amount of pen that he has. So that's the spell damage, just shy of 4k fully buffed. As you can see, his spell penetration is already sitting at 12,600. This of course will go up a further 6,000 with Elidraine, but that does not show on the stat sheet there. So on his front bar, 12,600 plus 5,900 from the Elidraine here, which is more than enough. When he procs his Balorgs, his pen will go up as well by just a little amount, as I'll show you now. 16,000 pen. 16,000 pen plus the 6,000 from his Elidraine. This puts Jack in the range of 20,000 pen most of the time, because as you'll see, it is very easy for Jack to get his ultimate back. It's very low, it's very cheap, it takes him just a few rotations to get his ultimate back because it's very, very cheap. That means he has a very high uptime on his Balorgs if he chooses to. So Jack is sitting on a 20k pen build with 4,000 spell damage. Okay, with 40k resistances at his disposal and Stage 3 Vampire. That is ridiculous. It is utterly ridiculous. Now it gets even worse because, like I said, this is an outnumbered 1vx / outnumbered build, right? which means a lot of the time you're just taking resources and getting into fights with ads and things like that. You will know that you build ult so fast, so fast. I've seen it happen where we just take 2 resources and start attacking a keep, and he says, I've got 500 ultimate, we break down the door, we bust in, there's a bunch of people waiting, and we just go into vamp ult and kill them all. So I'll show you now his very fully buffed stats. There you go. Ridiculous. Look, 24,000 pen. 24,000 pen. If he holds his Balorgs for 500 ultimate, like I said, which he does a lot. He does this so often. This is not a rare occurrence. He does this all the time. I'm sure he'll show you in the clips. 24,000 pen on top of Ellie Drain. So anybody out there that thinks this build will not be able to kill you, 24,000 pen with 4,000 spell damage on Magplar, which is disgusting because it got some very good buffs this patch. You're gonna die. Trust me, you'll die. Now we are stuck in vampire form, unfortunately, at this very second because we're in the house. But I can show you that again in just a moment. So we'll go over the other ones. Now his recovery is a little bit low, but if I pop a pot, you'll see it goes up to just shy of 2,000. So we'll say that's 2,000 just for simple sakes. Now this will go higher with Ellie Drain. Your recovery in this game takes every 2 seconds. Okay, now Ellie Drain gives you its sustain back every 1 second. So all you have to do is you take that and you times it by 2, which is 336. So he'll get 336 mag recovery on top of his other recovery, which is 2,000 that takes every 2 seconds. So every 2 seconds he'll get 2,000 magic back on top of another 336 from Ellie Drain. And then over here we come down to Rune. Again, like I said, recovery takes every 2 seconds. So from his Rune he gets a further 4,800. So yes, on the stat sheet his recovery doesn't seem to be that high. However, he is close to 3,000 recovery fully buffed on this build. So running stage 3 vampire and having survival instincts in his CP, reducing his skill cost by 5%, with nearly 3k recovery, he is fine. Yes, you can have this much damage and this much recovery and this much tankiness this patch. It is ridiculous. It is honestly ridiculous. So, nearly 3,000 recovery fully buffed, 4,000 spell damage. 90% of the time through the fight he'll have 19k to 20k pen, and then at full maximum push he will have 24k pen. It's ridiculous. So the other stats are pretty basic, pretty standard. 33,000 magic, 28,000 health, and 18,000 stamina. Health is at that perfect sweet spot. You either want 28 or you want 30k health. There's no lower than 28. Don't do that. Mag, you can afford to drop a little bit if you want to. You can put some infused on there, but it's not needed. This is the sweet spot for him, and the other recoveries don't really matter. Stamina recovery is very low, but that doesn't mean anything. He has mist form, some well fitted, and he can run tripods if he wants to. Health recovery is dead. It got nerfed, so we don't even want to look at that. And there you go.